The war elephants scream. It is October 19th, 22 BC, and on a dusty plain 75 miles southwest of Carthage, near the town of Zama Regia, the earth trembles beneath the weight of destiny. 80 massive beasts, tusks gleaming, towers swaying on their backs, lumber forward in an irregular line nearly a mile wide. Behind them, 55,000 men begin their advance. The dust they raise turns the morning sun blood red. Across the field, barely 600 yards away, another army waits. 40,000 men stand in perfect formation, their shields locked, their spears angled skyward like a steel forest. They do not move. They do not waver. And in the terrible silence before the storm, every man on both sides knows that this day will decide the fate of the Mediterranean world. 2 armies, 2 generals, 2 civilizations locked in a death struggle that has already consumed 17 years, hundreds of thousands of lives, and transformed the ancient world into an abattoir of ambition. The elephants scream again, and the collision begins. The first Carthaginian war elephant reaches the Roman line at full charge, 3 tons of muscle and fury moving at 15 miles per hour. The impact sounds like a lightning strike. Men are flung into the air. Shields splinter. The animal's trumpet of rage pierces through the roar of 40,000 voices. Blood sprays across polished bronze. A Roman Hastatus, a young spearman named Marcus Porcius Rufus, 19 years old, from a farm outside Praeneste, finds himself looking up at the beast's eye, dark and ancient and terrible, in the heartbeat before the tusks descend. But then, something extraordinary happens. The Roman lines part like water. The elephants, driven mad by trumpet blasts and javelin volleys, surge through the gaps and find nothing but empty space. They rampage through past the Roman infantry into the rear where cavalry and velites skirmishers harry them with spears and screams. The Carthaginian attack, conceived as an unstoppable hammer blow, dissolves into chaos in the first 5 minutes of contact. And watching from his command position on a low rise, Hannibal Barca, the man who had brought Rome to its knees, who had crossed the Alps with elephants, who had slaughtered 8 Roman armies in 16 years, watches the tide of history beginning to turn against him. This is the Battle of Zama. This is where empires are forged and legends die. This is the day that will decide whether Rome rises to dominate the world or whether Carthage will break the Republic forever. To understand what brings these armies to this dusty plain in North Africa, we must first understand the men who lead them. 2 generals, separated by 20 years in age and a universe in experience, bound together by fate and mutual obsession. Born in 247 BC in Carthage, the greatest maritime power of the Western Mediterranean, Hannibal is 45 years old when he takes the field at Zama. His name means grace of Baal in Punic, but there has been precious little grace in his life. Only war. Hannibal was born into conflict the way some men are born into wealth, explains Dr. Adrian Goldsworthy, author and military historian. His father, Hannibal Barca, made 9-year-old Hannibal swear an oath of eternal hatred against Rome. That oath shaped every single decision he made for the next 36 years. By 202 BC, Hannibal has spent half his life trying to destroy the Roman Republic. He has won victories that should be impossible. Trebia, Lake Trasimene, Cannae, battles where he was outnumbered, out-resourced, cut off from supplies, yet through sheer tactical genius, turned Roman legions into corpses. At Cannae alone, on a single afternoon in August 216 BC, Hannibal's army killed between 50 and 70,000 Roman soldiers, the worst military disaster in Rome's history, perhaps in all of ancient history. For 15 years, he has ravaged Italy, marching his army up and down the peninsula, burning Roman farms, freeing Roman slaves, humiliating the republic that considers itself destined to rule the world. But now, recalled to Africa to defend Carthage itself from Roman invasion, Hannibal looks different, older, harder. He has lost an eye to infection in his Italian campaigns. He wears a patch of leather across the empty socket, a pirate's mark on a general's face. His remaining eye is dark, fierce, calculating. He speaks 6 languages fluently. He reads Greek philosophy. He quotes Homer. He is, by any measure, a genius. He is also desperate. By the time Hannibal returns to Africa in 203 BC, he's been fighting for 16 years with minimal support from Carthage, notes Professor Eve MacDonald, specialist in Punic history at the University of Reading. The Carthaginian Senate has essentially abandoned him. He's low on supplies, his veteran soldiers are exhausted, and he absolutely knows that if he loses this battle, Carthage is finished. Standing beside Hannibal on the morning of October 19th is his brother Mago, wounded in a recent skirmish, barely able to sit his horse, but refusing to miss this battle. There is also Maharbal, his cavalry commander, the man who once told Hannibal after Cannae, "You know how to win a victory, but not how to use one." That comment still stings, 16 years later. And somewhere in the Carthaginian ranks, among the 55,000 infantry and cavalry, stands a young soldier named Bomilcar, 23 years old, a spearman in the Libyan phalanx. He has been with Hannibal since the march from Spain, through the Alps, across Italy. He saw the snows of the mountains that killed half the army. He fought at Cannae, at Capua, at Tarentum. He has spent his entire adult life at war. He cannot remember peace. Today, he polishes his spear point and tries to control the trembling in his hands. Across the field stands a man 21 years younger, 34 years old, already called Africanus by his troops, though the Senate has not yet made the title official. Publius Cornelius Scipio should not be here. By all rights, he should be dead. Scipio is an aristocrat, born in 236 BC into one of Rome's oldest patrician families. But unlike most Roman nobles who inherit command through political connections, Scipio has earned his reputation in blood. He was 17 at the Battle of Ticinus in 218 BC, the first major engagement of the war, when Hannibal's cavalry ambushed his father's army. Young Publius saw his father, the consul Publius Cornelius Scipio the Elder, surrounded by Carthaginian horsemen, wounded, about to die. The boy charged into the melee, gathered a handful of cavalrymen, and carved a path through the enemy to rescue his father. The consul lived. The son became a legend. At Cannae, where 70,000 Romans died, 18-year-old Scipio survived the encirclement and led 4,000 refugees off the field. While other nobles despaired, while some whispered of abandoning Italy entirely, young Scipio stood in the wreckage and swore he would never surrender. Scipio understood something that most Romans didn't, says Dr. Barry Strauss, military historian at Cornell University. He understood that to beat Hannibal, you couldn't just copy Roman tactics and hope for the best. You had to study Hannibal, learn from him, become him. Scipio spent years analyzing every battle Hannibal fought, and then he adapted those tactics for Roman use. By age 25, Scipio commanded Roman forces in Spain, technically illegal, since he hadn't held the required political offices, but Rome was desperate. In Spain, he won a series of stunning victories, driving the Carthaginians from the peninsula using Hannibal's own tactics against Hannibal's own family. Hannibal's brothers, first Hasdrubal, then Mago, fell before Scipio's armies. In 204 BC, at age 32, Scipio did what no Roman general had dared. He invaded Africa. Not to raid, not to threaten, to conquer. To force Carthage to recall Hannibal from Italy and fight on home ground. The strategy worked. Hannibal came home. Now they face each other, master and student, old lion and young wolf. Scipio is tall for a Roman, nearly 6 feet, with the build of an athlete and the bearing of a king. He wears his dark hair short in the Roman fashion. His face is clean-shaven, aristocratic, handsome in the way that makes sculptors reach for marble. But his eyes, brown, intense, burning with certainty, reveals something harder underneath. He has seen too much death to be merely handsome. He has climbed over too many corpses to be merely noble. Beside him stands Gaius Laelius, his closest friend and cavalry commander, the man who has fought beside Scipio in every major engagement for 10 years. There is also Massinissa, the Numidian prince who has allied with Rome, bringing 6,000 cavalry that Scipio desperately needs. Massinissa has his own reasons for being here. He wants to crush Carthage and become king of all Numidia. Revenge and ambition make powerful allies. And in the Roman ranks, among the 40,000 infantry, stands Marcus Porcius Rufus, the 19-year-old Hestatus we glimpsed in the opening. Marcus is a farmer's son, conscripted 2 years ago, trained in Spain, blooded in a dozen skirmishes in Africa. He carries a gladius, the Spanish short sword that Rome has adopted, and a shield painted with the red and gold of his legion. He has written a letter to his mother that he carries inside his armor, folded against his heart. He does not expect to survive the day, but he will die standing, the way his centurion taught him, the way Rome demands. At Zama, two military philosophies collided. Hannibal represented the old world, mercenary armies, tactical brilliance, personal genius. Scipio represented the new, systematic training, institutional knowledge, the grinding power of republican organization. In many ways, it wasn't just two men fighting, it was two futures. Dr. Patrick Hunt, Stanford University. The Second Punic War begins 20 years before Zama, in 218 BC, with a dispute over a Spanish city called Saguntum. But the real causes run deeper. Old grievances, wounded pride, and the fundamental question of whether the Mediterranean can contain two great powers. Rome and Carthage are oil and water, fire and ice. Rome is a land power, a republic of farmers and soldiers, disciplined, relentless, expanding slowly like a glacier across Italy. Carthage is a maritime empire, a plutocracy of merchants and sailors, wealthy beyond measure, controlling trade routes from Spain to the Levant. They fought once before, in the First Punic War, 264–241 BC, a grinding 23-year struggle that ended with Roman victory and Carthaginian humiliation. Carthage lost Sicily, paid crushing war reparations, and watched Roman power spread across the western Mediterranean. Hannibal Barca, Hannibal's father, never forgave Rome. He rebuilt Carthaginian power in Spain, establishing what was essentially a family empire in Iberia, mining silver, recruiting Spanish tribesmen, and raising his sons, Hannibal, Hasdrubal, and Mago, to be instruments of vengeance. When Hannibal took command in Spain at age 26, he immediately began pushing the boundaries of the treaty with Rome. The siege of Saguntum in 219 BC was a deliberate provocation. When Rome demanded Hannibal be handed over for punishment, Carthage refused. War became inevitable. But this would not be a conventional war. The Alps rear above the Carthaginian army like walls of ice and stone. It is October 218 BC, and Hannibal's 38,000 infantry, 8,000 cavalry, and 37 war elephants are attempting something no general has ever done, crossing the highest mountains in Europe with an army invading Italy from the north. The cold is a living thing, clawing at exposed skin, turning breath to fog, freezing men in their sleep. Bomilcar the spearman, just 7 years old and traveling with his father, a Libyan officer, will remember this march for the rest of his life. The horses screaming as they slide off icy paths into chasms. The elephants bellowing in confusion, the bodies left behind in the snow because there's no time, no strength, no hope of burial. Nearly half the army dies in 15 days of climbing. But when they descend into the Po Valley in northern Italy, they are inside the Roman heartland. The Republic, which expected to fight in Spain or Africa, suddenly finds the enemy at its throat. What follows is a masterclass in military genius and Roman suffering. Trebia River, December 218 BC. Hannibal baits the Romans into crossing an icy river, then crushes them with a cavalry ambush. 20,000 Roman dead, Lake Trasimene, June 217 BC. Hannibal ambushes an entire Roman army in the morning fog. 15,000 Romans are killed in 3 hours, driven into the lake to drown in their armor. The consul Gaius Flaminius dies fighting, his body never recovered. And then Cannae, August 2nd, 216 BC. The masterpiece. The plain of Cannae bakes under the August sun. 87,000 Roman soldiers advance in a massive formation, the largest army the Republic has ever fielded. The consuls Varro and Paulus have been told to crush Hannibal decisively. The Senate wants this war ended. Hannibal has 50,000 men. He is outnumbered, out-equipped, and, on paper, doomed. He smiles as he watches the Romans advance. His line is shallow in the center. Gauls and Spanish troops, brave but lightly armored. On the flanks, he places his African veterans in deep formations. His cavalry, vastly superior to Rome's, guard both wings. The Romans crash into his center. The Gauls and Spanish begin to fall back, slowly, grudgingly. The Romans push harder, sensing victory. Their formation compacts, squeezing inward, chasing the retreating center. The trap springs. Hannibal's cavalry destroys the Roman horsemen on both flanks, then wheels inward. The African infantry pivots inward, and suddenly 87,000 Romans are surrounded, packed so tightly they cannot raise their weapons. The slaughter is mechanical, surgical, merciless. Young Scipio, 18 years old, his armor soaked with blood, leads 4,000 men in a desperate breakout. He does not look back. Behind him, the killing continues until nightfall. By sunset, between 50 and 70,000 Romans are dead. Paulus, the consul, dies fighting. Varro escapes. The river Aufidus runs red for 3 days. Cannae was not just a battle. It was a statement. Hannibal showed that tactical genius could overcome any numerical advantage. For 2,000 years, military academies have studied Cannae. It remains the perfect battle of encirclement, the gold standard of tactical destruction. Dr. Gregory Daly, author of Cannae, The Experience of Battle. Rome should have surrendered. Any other state would have. But Rome is not any other state. Instead, the Senate raises new armies. They free slaves and arm them. They recruit boys as young as 15. They adopt a strategy of exhaustion, refuse battle, shadow Hannibal, cut his supply lines, wait for him to weaken. For 15 years, Hannibal marches through Italy, winning battles, but unable to break Rome's will. Capua, Rome's second city, defects to him, then is recaptured and savagely punished. Tarentum opens its gates, then watches Rome besiege it for 5 years and take it back. Slowly, inexorably, Rome learns. Rome adapts. Rome endures. And in Spain, young Scipio studies his enemy and begins winning victories of his own. If you appreciate stories like this, forgotten battles that change the course of human civilization, the clash of brilliant minds on fields of blood, the moments where the fate of empires hung by a thread, please consider subscribing to our channel. We bring you history not as a list of dates, but as the living, breathing, terrifying drama it actually was. Hit that subscribe button, ring the notification bell, and join us as we explore the moments that made our world. Because history isn't just about the past, it's about understanding how we got here and where we might be going. By 203 BC, Scipio has conquered Spain and invaded Africa. He has defeated Carthaginian armies at the Great Plains, forcing the Senate of Carthage to recall their greatest general. Hannibal leaves Italy after 15 years, his army undefeated on the field, but his strategic position untenable. The recall must have been agony for Hannibal, suggests Professor Dexter Hoyos, Hannibal biographer. He had given everything to the Italian campaign. His eye, his health, 15 years of his life. And now Carthage was begging him to come home and save them from the mess they'd helped create by not supporting him adequately. The two armies meet in the summer of 202 BC near Utica. But before battle can be joined, something remarkable happens. Hannibal requests a personal meeting with Scipio. The tent stands alone on neutral ground between the armies. Inside, two men face each other across a simple wooden table. Hannibal speaks first. His Latin is perfect, with just a hint of Punic accent. "I wanted to see you with my own eyes," he says. "The man who learned my lessons so well that he forced me from Italy." Scipio studies the older man, the leather patch, the scarred hands, the bearing of someone who has carried an impossible burden for too long. "I studied all your battles," Scipio replies. "Trebia, Trasimene, Cannae. You are the greatest military mind of our age. And yet, you beat my brothers, conquered Spain, invaded my homeland." Hannibal's smile is thin. Perhaps the student has surpassed the teacher. They talk for 2 hours. Livy and Polybius, the ancient historians, do not record the full conversation, but they both report that Hannibal offers peace. Carthage will withdraw from all disputed territories, pay reparations, recognize Roman supremacy in the Western Mediterranean. Scipio's response is measured. "Last year, we would have accepted those terms, but you've returned. Your presence changes the calculation. Rome will not negotiate while Hannibal Barca commands an army in the field." Hannibal nods slowly. "So it must be battle." "Yes. I have 80 war elephants. I know. I have veterans who fought with me in Italy. I know. I have never lost a pitched battle in my entire career." Scipio leans forward. His young face is hard. There is always a first time. The meeting ends. Both generals return to their camps. War is now inevitable. Over the following weeks, both armies maneuver for position. Massinissa's Numidian cavalry raids Carthaginian supply lines. Skirmishes erupt and fade. Then, in mid-October, Hannibal marches his army inland to Zama Regia, a town controlling important wells and grain stores. Scipio follows. On October 18th, the armies camp within sight of each other. Soldiers on both sides can see enemy campfires, hear their voices carry on the wind. Marcus Porcius Rufus, the young Roman Hastatus, sits with his contubernium, his 8-man tent group, and tries to eat the evening porridge. His hands shake. He is not alone. All around him, 19-year-olds, 20-year-olds, boys playing at soldiers, try to pretend they are not terrified. His tentmate, Gaius Valerius, asks the question they're all thinking. Will it be like Cannae? The oldest soldier, a 30-year-old princeps named Lucius who fought in Spain, shakes his head. Scipio is not Varro. He knows what he's doing. Trust the formation. Trust your training. Keep your shield up and your gladius moving. We do that, we win. And if the elephants break the line, another asks. Lucius spits into the fire. Then we die like Romans, on our feet, facing forward. Marcus fingers the letter inside his armor and says nothing. In the Carthaginian camp, Bomilcar the Libyan spearman performs the same rituals he has performed before every battle for 16 years. He sharpens his spear, he oils his shield. He prays to Tanit, the Carthaginian goddess of war, and to Baal Hammon, the chief god. Unlike the Romans, who are mostly conscripts serving for a season or two, Bomilcar is a professional soldier. He is paid well when Carthage has money. He has seen things that would break civilian minds. He has killed more men than he can count, but tonight, for the first time in 16 years, he feels something he has not felt since the Alps. Doubt. The army Hannibal has assembled is not the finely tuned instrument that devastated Rome and Italy. It is a patchwork, some Italian veterans like Bomilcar, yes, but also newly recruited Carthaginian citizens, Libyan conscripts, Gallic and Spanish mercenaries whose loyalty is to their pay, not to Carthage. And the elephants. 80 elephants, yes, but most are young, barely trained, as likely to rampage through their own lines as the enemy's. Bomilcar has served with Hannibal long enough to read the general's face. Tonight, reviewing the troops, Hannibal looked like a man playing a weak hand and knowing it. "We've beaten worse odds," Bomilcar mutters to his shield brother, a Spanish mercenary named Hannibal. Hannibal grunts. "In Italy, we had mountains to hide in, forests to retreat to. Here?" He gestures at the flat, open plain visible beyond the camp. "Here, if Scipio's cavalry gets around our flanks, there's nowhere to run." Bomilcar says nothing, because Hannibal is right. The sun rises over Zama on a clear October morning, the kind of day that would be beautiful if not for the armies preparing to destroy each other. Hannibal deploys his forces in 3 lines, an unusual formation for him, but necessary given the mixed quality of his troops. The first line, Gallic, Spanish, and Ligurian mercenaries, 12,000 men, expendable and aggressive. The second line, 400 yards behind, Libyan and Carthaginian citizen soldiers, nearly 20,000 men, the backbone of his army. The third line, another 400 yards back, his Italian veterans, 16,000 men who have fought with him for 15 years, his final reserve and best troops. On the flanks, Carthaginian and Numidian cavalry, but not as many as he needs. Massinissa's defection to Rome has cost Hannibal crucial mounted strength, and in front of everything, 80 war elephants, the largest concentration ever fielded in a single battle. "Hannibal's deployment shows his genius even in desperation," explains Dr. Goldsworthy. "He couldn't trust the mercenaries, so he put them in front to absorb the Roman charge and wear them down. He kept his veterans in the rear, fresh, ready to deliver the killing blow when the Romans were exhausted. It was a calculated risk, but in battle, everything is risk." Across the field, Scipio deploys in the traditional Roman triplex aces, 3 lines of infantry, but with crucial modifications based on what he's learned from studying Hannibal. The first line, hastati, young spearmen like Marcus, 15,000 men. Second line, principes, veteran infantry, 12,000 men. Third line, triarii, the most experienced soldiers, the final reserve, 8,000 men. On each flank, Roman and Italian cavalry, and crucially, Massinissa's 6,000 Numidian horsemen. But Scipio has done something unprecedented. He has created gaps in his formation, corridors running front to back, like alleys through the army. "This is the crucial tactical innovation," notes Dr. Strauss. Scipio knew the elephants were coming. Instead of presenting a solid formation for them to smash, he created channels for them to run through harmlessly. It sounds simple, but it required incredible training and discipline. One mistake, one unit-breaking formation, and the whole plan collapses. Scipio rides along the lines on a white horse. His voice carries clearly. "Romans, today we face the general who has haunted our nightmares for 16 years, Hannibal Barca, the man who crossed the Alps, the victor of Cannae." 40,000 men listen, shields raised. "But I tell you this. Hannibal fought those battles with veteran troops, with secure supply lines, with allies across Italy. Today, he fights with mercenaries and conscripts. Today, he fights in his own homeland, with his back to the walls of Carthage. Today, he is the one who is desperate." A roar rises from the Roman ranks. "We have chased him out of Italy, conquered Spain, invaded Africa. Today, we finish what we started. Today, Rome breaks the Barcid curse forever. Today, we show the world that no enemy, no matter how brilliant, no matter how feared, can stand against the will of the Roman people." The roar becomes a thunder. 40,000 men beat their spears against their shields. a sound like continuous lightning. Marcus Porcius Rufus screams with them until his throat is raw. The fear is still there, coiled in his stomach like a snake. But it is joined now by something else. Fury, pride, the mad certainty that has sent Romans to die in formation for 300 years. Across the field, Hannibal gives his own speech. It is quieter, more measured, but his veterans hear every word. "You men," he says, looking at the Italian veterans in the third line, "you know what Rome is. You have burned their farms, killed their sons. For 15 years, we were undefeated. Remember that. Remember Trebia. Remember Trasimene. Remember Cannae." He pauses. The silence stretches. "Today, we fight for Carthage, for our homes, our families, our gods. Scipio has come to destroy everything we are. Will we let him? No!" The shout is smaller than the Roman roar, but fiercer, more personal. "Then show him what Carthage means. Show him what I have taught you. Show him that Hannibal Barca does not lose." The battle is about to begin. At approximately 9 a.m., Hannibal gives the signal. Horns blare, drums pound, and 80 war elephants begin their advance, guided by mahouts on their necks, urged forward by trumpets and shouts and the screaming of men. The sight is apocalyptic. 80 beasts, each weighing 3 to 4 tons, advancing in a ragged line nearly a mile wide, dust rising around them, the earth shaking. Marcus Porcius Rufus, standing in the front rank of the hastati, watches them come. His centurion, a scarred veteran named Quintus Flavius Crispus, barks orders, "Steady, dress the line. When they come, open the corridors. Velites, prepare javelins. Cornicens, ready the horns." The elephants accelerate. 500 yards, 400, 300. Every Roman cornicen, hornblower, raises their instrument and blasts at once. The sound is enormous, discordant, terrifying. Deliberately so, the elephants falter, their ears flatten, some veer sideways, spooked. The velites, light skirmishers positioned in the gaps, hurl javelins. Dozens of the light spears strike home, wounding the elephants, maddening them. The mahouts lose control. Some elephants charge forward, others wheel back toward their own lines. Chaos spreads. The Roman maniples, tactical units of 120 men, slide sideways with parade ground precision. The corridors widen. The elephants, seeking the path of least resistance, funnel into the gaps. Most of them run straight through the Roman army without engaging. They emerge in the rear, where cavalry and reserve velites are waiting. Spears and screams drive them further from the battlefield. A few elephants crash into Roman units before the gaps open, causing casualties, but not the breakthrough Hannibal hoped for. Some elephants, maddened by wounds and noise, turn back toward the Carthaginian lines. They trample through the Numidian cavalry on Hannibal's left flank, scattering the horsemen. In 15 minutes, Hannibal's trump card, his 80 elephants, has been neutralized. "The elephant charge failed for several reasons," explains Professor Hunt. "Poor training mostly, but also Scipio's tactical preparation. He had studied how Hannibal used elephants and developed counters. The corridors, the horn blasts, the javelins, all of it was designed to turn the elephants from weapons into liabilities. It worked perfectly." With the elephant threat diminished, Scipio unleashes his cavalry. Laelius, commanding the Roman and Italian horse on the left, charges into the confused Carthaginian cavalry still reeling from the elephant stampede. Simultaneously, Massinissa leads his Numidians against the opposing Numidians on Hannibal's right. The cavalry battle is brutal, swirling, desperate. Massinissa fights a man he knows, Tychaeus, a Numidian prince who sided with Carthage. Their swords ring in the dust, horses scream, men fall, but the Roman and Massinician cavalry are fresh and unified. The Carthaginian horse, hampered by the elephant disaster, breaks. Within 30 minutes, both of Hannibal's cavalry wings are routed, driven from the field. Critically, Lelius and Massinissa do not chase the fleeing cavalry into the distance. They rally their men and prepare to return to the battle. This discipline, refusing the temptation to pursue broken enemies, will prove decisive. With the cavalry gone and the elephants dispersed, the real battle begins. 40,000 Roman infantry against 55,000 Carthaginian infantry in the oldest form of warfare. Shield to shield, sword to sword, push and kill. Hannibal's first line, the Gallic, Spanish, and Ligurian mercenaries, crashes into the Roman hastati. The sound is indescribable. Imagine dropping a building onto another building, 12,000 men smashing into 15,000 men at walking speed, shields impacting, spears thrusting, swords slashing. The front ranks become a meat grinder. Marcus Porcius Rufus finds himself face to face with a Gaul, a giant of a man, 6.5 feet tall, bare-chested, swinging a longsword. The Gaul's first strike shatters Marcus's shield. The second strike would decapitate him, except his shield brother, Gaius Valerius, stabs the Gaul in the side with a spear. The Gaul roars, turns, and Gaius stabs him again. Marcus, shield gone, draws his gladius and hacks at the Gaul's legs. The giant falls. Marcus and Gaius stab downward until he stops moving. They don't celebrate. There are 50,000 enemies still standing. The melee continues for nearly an hour. The mercenaries fight hard. They're being paid to, but they're tiring. The Roman hastati, younger but better trained, begin to push forward. Slowly, 1 foot at a time, over bodies, through blood. Hannibal's second line, the Libyans and Carthaginian citizens, should advance to support the mercenaries. They don't. On Hannibal's orders, the second line holds position. He is preserving his strength, letting the mercenaries exhaust the Romans before committing his better troops. But the mercenaries don't know this. They think they're being abandoned, betrayed. "They're not supporting us!" The cry goes up in Gallic, in Spanish, in Ligurian. Panic spreads. The mercenaries begin to retreat, not in formation, but in a rout. They run straight into Hannibal's second line. Some of the Libyans and Carthaginians attack their own mercenaries, trying to force them back into the fight. A three-way melee erupts. Romans fighting mercenaries, fighting Carthaginians. The battlefield descends into chaos. Scipio sees the confusion and acts instantly. He sounds the recall. The Roman hastati and principes pull back, reform their lines, close the corridors, dress their ranks. "This is the difference between a good general and a great one," notes Dr. Goldsworthy. In the chaos of a three-way melee, most commanders would just push forward, try to exploit the confusion. Scipio had the discipline and the control to pull his troops back, reorganize, and prepare for the real fight he knew was coming. By early afternoon, Hannibal's first 2 lines are shattered or fleeing. The Romans stand in perfect formation, bloodied but organized. And behind the carnage, Hannibal's third line, his 16,000 Italian veterans, advance in perfect order, shields locked, spears ready. Bomilcar, the Libyan spearman, stands in the third line, in the center of the phalanx. He has watched the mercenaries break, watched the second line crumble. Now it is his turn. The turn of the men who have followed Hannibal for 16 years, who have bled for him in the Alps, in Italy, in countless battles. These are not boys. They are professional soldiers, 30 to 40 years old, scarred and hard and completely loyal to the one-eyed general who has led them through hell. "Advance!" Hannibal's order echoes. The third line moves forward. The Roman army faces them. The hastati and principes are exhausted from the earlier fighting. Scipio makes a decision. He pulls the hastati and principes to the wings and advances his triarii, his veteran third line, to the center. Now, it is veteran against veteran. The best Rome has against the best Carthage has. The oldest battle form imaginable. 2 phalanxes, walking toward each other across a field already covered in bodies. They collide. This fight is different from the earlier melee. There is no panic, no confusion, just professional soldiers doing their job with mechanical efficiency. Stab, block, step forward, stab again. No wasted motion, no heroic gestures, just killing. Marcus Porcius Rufus, repositioned on the wing, watches the veteran clash from 30 yards away and thanks every god that he is not in the center. Men are dying in pairs, in groups, in formation, and neither side is giving ground. For nearly an hour, the lines push against each other, neither breaking, neither yielding. It is like watching tectonic plates collide, slow, enormous, inevitable. Hannibal's veterans are magnificent, but they are tired. 16 years of war have taken their toll, and they are outnumbered now, having left thousands of dead behind in the first two lines. Slowly, incrementally, the Romans begin to push forward. One step, another. The Carthaginian line flexes but holds, and then, from the flanks, dust rises. Laelius and Massinissa have returned. 6,000 Roman and Numidian cavalry, reformed and ready, charge into the rear of Hannibal's veteran infantry. The Carthaginian third line, already locked in combat with the Roman front, cannot turn to face the cavalry. They are caught between hammer and anvil. "Form square!" Hannibal's officers scream, trying to create a defensive formation. Some units manage it, most don't have time. The cavalry hits like a hurricane. Horses and spears and swords crash into the rear ranks of the Carthaginian phalanx. Men fall in waves, the formation cracks. The Romans in front push harder. Bomilcar sees a Roman cavalryman riding toward him, lance leveled. He raises his shield. The lance punches through the shield, through his shoulder, pins him to the ground. The cavalryman rides past, leaving the spear in place. Bomilcar tries to stand. He can't. The world grays. Around him, the Carthaginian line is disintegrating. Some units hold together, dying in formation. Others break and run. There is nowhere to run to. Hannibal, watching from his command position, sees his army dying. For the first time in his career, he is being tactically outmaneuvered. Scipio has used Hannibal's own cannae strategy against him, fix the enemy with infantry, then envelop with cavalry. The student has surpassed the teacher. By late afternoon, the Battle of Zama is over. Hannibal's army has been destroyed. 20,000 Carthaginians are dead. 15,000 are captured. The survivors flee toward Carthage. Roman casualties are lighter, perhaps 1,500 dead, 4,000 wounded. Marcus Porcius Rufus is alive, his armor dented, his gladius notched, his shield gone, his body shaking with exhaustion and shock. Around him, Romans are stripping the dead, Carthaginian and Roman alike, of armor and valuables. It is an ancient rite of conquest, and no one questions it. Hannibal himself escapes with a small cavalry escort. He rides hard for Carthage, his remaining eye fixed on the horizon, his mind already calculating the next move, the next defense, the next impossible plan. But he knows. Rome has won. Bomilcar the spearman is found still alive, pinned by the lance, blood soaking the dust. Roman surgeons, such as they are, remove the spear. He will survive, will be sold as a slave, will live 20 more years in Sicily, never seeing Carthage again. Scipio does not pursue Hannibal personally. He has won the battle. Now he must win the peace. The Treaty of Zama is signed in 201 BC. The terms are brutal. Carthage must surrender all war elephants. The survivors of Zama are led away, trumpet calls fading. Carthage must destroy all but 10 warships, ending forever its status as a maritime power. Carthage must pay 10,000 talents of silver over 50 years, an amount designed to cripple the economy. Carthage must never wage war without Rome's permission. Effectively, Carthage becomes a Roman client state, independent in name only. Hannibal survives the peace. He becomes chief magistrate of Carthage, tries to reform the corrupt government, makes powerful enemies. In 195 BC, Rome demands his extradition. He flees to the east, becomes a military advisor to various kings fighting Rome, and remains a thorn in Rome's side for 2 more decades. In 183 BC, trapped by Roman agents in Bithynia, 84-year-old Hannibal takes poison rather than surrender. His last words, according to Livy, "Let us free the Romans from their long anxiety, since they think it tries their patience too much to wait for an old man's death." Even in death, he is defiant. Scipio Africanus returns to Rome in triumph. He is granted a massive parade, showered with honors, celebrated as the savior of the Republic. But politics in Rome is vicious. Within years, he is accused of corruption by his enemies, possibly at the instigation of Cato the Elder, who hates Scipio's Hellenistic culture and growing power. Scipio retires to his estate at Liternum in disgust and dies in 183 BC, the same year as Hannibal, his eternal rival. According to legend, both men asked to be buried far from Rome and Carthage, the cities they served and which betrayed them. There's a tragic symmetry to their ends, reflects Dr. MacDonald. Both men were military geniuses who served ungrateful states. Both died in exile, one step ahead of their enemies. In a way, they had more in common with each other than with their own countrymen. The Battle of Zama transforms the Mediterranean world. Rome, victorious, begins its expansion eastward. Within 50 years, Rome will conquer Greece, Macedon, and much of Asia Minor. Within a century, it will control the entire Mediterranean, Mare Nostrum, our sea, as Romans will call it. Carthage, broken, limps along for another 50 years. But Rome does not forget, does not forgive. In 149 BC, on a trumped-up pretext, Rome declares the Third Punic War. For 3 years, Roman armies besiege Carthage. In 146 BC, the city falls. The Romans systematically destroy every building, kill or enslave the entire population of 150,000, and according to legend, plow the ruins with salt so nothing will ever grow there again. Carthago delenda est. Carthage must be destroyed. The phrase Cato the Elder repeated obsessively in the Senate. At Zama, that destruction became inevitable, but Hannibal's legacy survives. For 2,000 years, military academies study his tactics. Napoleon studies him, Patton studies him, Rommel studies him, the Cannae maneuver, double envelopment, pinning the center and crushing the flanks, remains the gold standard of tactical battle. Hannibal lost the war, but won immortality, suggests Professor Hunt. Scipio won the war and was largely forgotten by history outside specialist circles. There's an injustice in that, but also a truth. We remember brilliant failure more vividly than workmanlike success. The Second Punic War costs Rome nearly 1/5 of its adult male population. Entire generations are wiped out. The social fabric of the Republic is strained to breaking. The farmland of southern Italy, ravaged by 15 years of war, never fully recovers. The concentration of wealth and slaves in the hands of Roman elites, accelerated by the spoils of Carthage, will contribute to the social conflicts that eventually destroy the Republic. In a very real sense, Rome wins the Punic Wars, but loses the Republic. The empire that rises from the ashes is partly built on the bones of Carthage. The battlefield at Zama is empty now. The bodies are long buried or burned. The blood has soaked into the earth. The dust has settled. If you visit the site today in modern Tunisia, you will find wheat fields and olive groves, and a small monument that most tourists ignore. There is no indication that 40,000 men fought and died here, that the course of Western civilization was decided on this ground, that the empire, which would give us Roman law, Roman roads, the Latin language, and the foundation of European culture was secured by young men like Marcus Porcius Rufus stabbing and dying in the North African heat. History has that quality. It reduces the most dramatic moments to silence. The screams fade, the blood dries, the monuments crumble. We are left with words in books, artifacts in museums, and the faint ghost trace of decisions made by men long dead. But what does Zama teach us across 22 centuries? First, that genius is not enough. Hannibal was arguably the more brilliant general, but Scipio had the better system. Rome's strength was never in producing military geniuses, though it had its share, but in creating institutions that could absorb defeat, learn, adapt, and grind forward regardless of casualties. The Roman Republic was a learning organization before we had a term for it. That capacity to institutionalize knowledge, to turn individual genius into systematic practice, is what separates powers that dominate from powers that flash brilliantly and fade. Second, that determination can overcome almost any setback. Rome should have lost the Second Punic War a dozen times. After Cannae, any rational calculation said Rome was finished. But Rome was not built on rational calculation. It was built on a bloody-minded refusal to accept defeat, a cultural conviction that surrender was literally unthinkable. That kind of national character cannot be taught or easily copied. It is forged over centuries, in small wars and constant struggle. By the time Hannibal invaded, Roman culture had been marinating in military values for 300 years. That cultural capital carried Rome through its darkest hour. Third, that wars are not fought in a vacuum. Hannibal lost as much to Carthaginian politics as to Scipio's tactics. If Carthage had sent him adequate reinforcements, if his political enemies in the Senate had not undermined him, the war might have ended differently. Scipio won partly because Rome gave him resources and authority that Carthage denied Hannibal. The home front matters, logistics matter, political support matters. Battles are romantic, wars are logistical. Fourth, and perhaps most important, that individual human beings, in all their complexity and contradiction, are the engine of history. Marcus Porcius Rufus, if he existed, and thousands like him certainly did, had no idea he was participating in a world historical event. He was a farmer's son trying not to die. Bomilcar fought for pay and loyalty to a charismatic general, not for abstract concepts of Carthaginian destiny. Scipio and Hannibal, for all their genius, were products of their cultures, their families, their educations, their traumas. History is not the unfolding of vast impersonal forces, though those exist. History is the cumulative result of millions of individual choices, made under pressure, often with incomplete information, by people doing their best or their worst in impossible circumstances. At Zama, 55,000 Carthaginians chose to fight rather than surrender. 40,000 Romans chose to stand in formation and face war elephants. 2 generals chose to risk everything on a single day's battle. Those choices created the world we live in. The sun sets over the battlefield. October 19th, 22 BC is ending. The living tend their wounds. The dead lie in their thousands, tangled together, Roman and Carthaginian, friend and enemy, all distinctions erased by death. In the Roman camp, Scipio dictates the terms he will offer Carthage. In the Carthaginian camp, Hannibal stares at the remnants of his army and begins planning the next impossibility. Somewhere in the ruins of the battlefield, a young Roman named Marcus sits against a dead horse, writing a letter to his mother with a piece of charcoal on a scrap of leather. He is alive. Against all odds, against every expectation, he has survived the most important battle of his generation. "Dear Mother," he writes, "I have seen things today I will never be able to explain. I have done things I will never be able to forget. But I am alive, and the war is won. And I hope, I might come home." He will keep that letter for the rest of his life. 60 years later, an old man dying in his bed, surrounded by grandchildren who have never known war, he will ask for the letter and hold it in his trembling hands and remember the day he stood on a plain in Africa and helped Rome become eternal. History is made of such moments, such small, human moments, woven together into tapestry that covers centuries. The Battle of Zama ended the Second Punic War. But in a deeper sense, it began something larger: the Roman domination of the Mediterranean, the spread of Latin culture, the foundation upon which much of Western civilization would be built. Every language derived from Latin, French, Spanish, Italian, Portuguese, Romanian, carries an echo of Zama. Every legal system based on Roman law traces its ancestry to the republic that Scipio saved. Every European city built on a Roman plan, every road that follows a Roman route, every aqueduct and amphitheater and arch, is a monument to what Rome became after it survived Hannibal. In the dust of North Africa, in the blood of 40,000 men, in the collision of two armies led by two of history's greatest generals, our world was forged. That is what Zama means. That is what Zama teaches. That is why, 22 centuries later, we remember. The Battle of Zama was fought on October 19th, 202 BC, approximately 75 miles southwest of Carthage, near modern-day Sakiet Sidi Youssef, Tunisia. Hannibal Barca lived until 183 B, dying by his own hand to avoid Roman capture. Publius Cornelius Scipio Africanus died the same year, 183 B, in self-imposed exile from the city he saved. The Second Punic War, 218-201 B, killed an estimated 300,000 to 400,000 people and changed the course of Western history. We remember them. There is nothing more uncertain than war. Hannibal Barca before the Battle of Zama. I would rather have the favor of fortune than the favor of men. Scipio Africanus.